seen blood. Look, I kept spitting. I spit something out hard. I thought it was my tooth, but come to find out it was a bullet.
20 years ago, 4012 was home to Wen Taylor hoisting a .380 semi-automatic.
All 7 people were just hardworking, regular people.
I was working. I was at Wendy's for almost a year, probably like 10 to 11 months.
Jaquan Johnson was working the grill. He was just 18 then.
I just turned 18. I was in my prime. I was getting ready to sign up for the Navy. I had a lot of goals and stuff.
I still felt, I know people say, "Oh, that happened 20 years ago," but to me, it sounded like it just felt like it happened yesterday. It just, it's just still there, and I watch it every day. I watch him every day.
They lost their loved ones, but your son lived. You still have your son, so
right.
But you don't have the same son that you used to have.
No.
Their neurobiology is also going to be off. Trauma can actually affect the way a person's brain functions and how their brain is structured. A person is not going to interact with people the way they normally would after experiencing a traumatic situation. You don't want to call someone who's experienced trauma a victim. You want to call them a survivor.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. We have an exceptional, that's the word I'm going to put there. We have an exceptional show in store for you. We have a wonderful guest that's in store. I want you to take the time right now. If you are just coming in, first of all, we want you to subscribe to Real Talk with Jean Price. We want you to comment. We want you to like. We want you to really be a part of what we're going to be talking about, not just tonight, but even other topics that's going to be coming up. We're going to be talking about some great current events, even for those that are looking outside today with the fires from the Canadian and New Jersey fires. It's just really, the air quality is really, really serious. So for those that are watching, I'm glad you're inside. Be careful if you happen to go outside. We want everybody to be safe. We want everybody to stay healthy, especially in a day like today. So today we're going to be talking about where do we go from here? It's going to be a great topic, but I want to take this time and I want you to help me welcome one of my favorite guests that's always on the show. And we have a great surprise because she'll be coming on the show once a month so we can have those kind of deep dialogues. Help me welcome Dr. Tay Bassett to Real Talk with Jean Price.
Hi, Lady Price. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. It's great to be back.
As always. Again, thank you so much for being on Real Talk. For those that don't know you, which I think a lot of our viewing audience does, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Tay Bassett, and I am a psychologist, professor, author, and associate pastor, and I am happy to be here.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Dr. Tay, let's just dive right into it. We already have people starting to chime in as we're getting started. I want to talk about where do we go from here? That is such a huge, even the it's so huge because there's so many things going on for us to talk about, well, where do we go from here?
Right.
But I want to kind of hone it in, if you don't mind. I want to talk about the trauma. I want to talk about practical strategies that individuals can employ to support their mental health. Where do we go from here, Dr. Tay, in dealing with mental health?
Well, I think the first thing is addressing or accepting that you've experienced something traumatic. A lot of us have experienced things and we're functioning in a trauma response, but we don't recognize what we went through as trauma. So first you have to accept the fact that it happened and accept how it's affecting you. Because we can, you can line up 10 people and they experience the same event.
Right.
And all of them aren't going to have a trauma response.
Right.
But those who do, once you recognize it, accept that it happened, accept that you are traumatized, and then address it. And then once you get to that point, because see, there's pre-work before actually addressing it, right?
Yes.
But once you decide to address it, of course, therapy. Yes, I'm biased, but I'm biased because it works.
Right.
Sometimes we need something more than just talking to, family or the homegirl or the spouse and doing pillow talk. Sometimes we need that professional
Right.
who has the training and can also give you an unbiased feedback about what you're going through, and then equip you with the tools.
Right. Dr. Tay, just a little bit of studying that I've done and a major study that you have done, trauma is considered an injury somewhere in the scheme of life, right? There's an injury. We all know that, like when I hurt my arm years ago at my job, there was an injury. So my arm is just not like it was. And I have the scar to prove there was an injury there.
Yeah.
What do you do with the scars though? Because sometimes with people with even dealing with mental health, they focus on the scar. They focus on how it looks now or how it feels now. How do we pull people out of the now to go to the next part of the healing?
Right. I love that you made the parallel between the physical and the mental, because that's a parallel that I've been making lately as well. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that sometimes the emotional pain is more painful than the physical pain, because we can go through physical pain and it will dissipate and eventually stop. Like if you break a bone, it's not always going to hurt, right? But the emotional pain, if you have that memory that's etched in it's like that memory, you can see it vividly decades later. Those things that were spoken against you, or those, things that were said in the midst of relational trauma, it's on a tape repetitively. So that pain is ongoing. But going back to the scar of trauma, it all depends on what you do with it.
Ooh, okay.
It can be a reminder of when you were broken. It can be a reminder, and I use quotes when I use the word broken, but it can be a reminder of who hurt you and how you hurt and all of those things, or it can represent what you've overcome. It's all about perspective.
That's so good. That's an aha moment right there. That was good. That was, and it's nice, Dr. Tay, because it's Melanie's life has chimed in and she's agreeing with what you're saying tonight. That is so good. It's how you look at it, because I can look at the scar now, and you're right. My perspective of this scar is totally different because I'm on the other side too.
Right.
So I totally see I just see it so differently now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, let's go a little deep. I want to ask you a question. How do we build a strong network to aid, like with the healing process? How does we got the acknowledgement or the acceptance? I get that. But how do we build that network? Because sometimes, Dr. Tay, it's hard sometimes to navigate by yourself.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Oftentimes it is. We just don't realize how difficult it is.
Yeah.
Until it gets too difficult. It's like, wow, I shouldn't have been navigating this by myself this whole time.
Right.
But now, like we're here, and now we need help, right? It's like since we're making the physical and mental parallel, some people don't go to the doctor until like the limb is hanging on by a tendon, right? Right? We often do that with our mental health as well. When it comes to coping, I usually describe coping in 3 levels. And I know you mentioned support network, but I'm gonna tie it in. You know how preachers say, stick with me, I'm going somewhere, right? So the level 1 is that's the coping techniques that you can engage in independently without anyone else or anything else. So that would be deep breathing, because all you need is you and your lungs, right? The level 2 would be if you utilize your resources, like someone else, like a friend or a loved one, or you're using something else. So like journaling, you need the pen, you need the journal, right? And then level 3 is professional help, because sometimes level 1 and level 2, it helped at one time, but maybe you need additional support. And I think if you're able to identify coping techniques for all levels, not only are you building your coping toolbox, as I like to say, but you're also building your social supports. There's plenty of research that suggests that the deeper, so to speak, and deep in quality, not in quantity, the deeper your social support system is, the better you'll fare. So you can, identify your people. We have people who we can just talk about we can talk about the word with. And then we have the people we can just, talk about current events. We have the people we go to when we don't really trust anyone else with the information. Have your list of people. Sometimes you need to even write it down, because you might be in those situations where you're feeling so down and you're in one of your darkest hours where you need to see it written down, because you might not even be able to retrieve that information.
Yeah.
So I think that's one way to kind of, it's dual purpose. You can build your coping tool, your coping skills, but you can also build your social supports.
That's so good. And that really lends itself into where I was going to go next, Dr. Tate, to talk about self-care, because that's what I hear you saying. That's part of a great self-care regimen.
Absolutely.
It just aligns itself that this is what you need to do to begin that process. I want to ask you kind of a personal question, and then not too personal. If you, we laugh at, we just had this thing to my audience. We just have this thing with each other. But have you ever experienced trauma in your life, right? And how did you navigate? Did you take the tools that you're saying now and apply them? Because you are a licensed therapist, like you're a counselor, you're all that, but in your own life, how did you fare?
The short answer is yes. Yes, I have. And part two of your question, I'm going to be honest. Did I always use the things that I teach people for a living? No.
Got it. Okay.
And I think one of the reasons is that one thing that I tell my clients is that what do armies do? They prepare during peacetime, so they're prepared for war. And there were times where I experienced something that ended up traumatizing me, that ended up being trauma. But because I wasn't building up my social supports or building up my coping techniques, because contrary to popular belief, mental health professionals aren't born with these tools. We have to learn and practice them ourselves, right?
Right.
So I think that's part of it. And also there's something called compassion fatigue. So while I was helping other people with their trauma,
Yes,
I didn't leave space to process my own. And because I didn't process it, it lingered. And it was like the dust and the dirt that you sweep under the rug. You'll sweep and sweep and sweep and sweep until you have a mountain in the middle of your living room. And it's just like, okay, now I got to deal with this.
and it had to be difficult because oftentimes when I'm talking to women or girls, whatever, I often reference Dr. Tay. When my girls were younger, it was so difficult to teach them principles or keys and then learn. Because I didn't know how. So teaching and learning to me, it was so beyond difficult. It was beyond difficult. So me and the trauma that I experienced in my life, it caused, and I love the word you use, it caused it to linger longer. Linger longer. Okay, come on, right? It caused it to, because I didn't know how to navigate. So you're trying to do this balancing act. And I really honestly, and like to your word, I love it being transparent. I didn't do a great job because I wasn't perfect in juggling. What does somebody do when it lingers longer and you're trying to juggle it all? Because somehow or another you made your way through that difficult cave. You came out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about the balance of that, because you said it lingered longer.
Yep. And you mentioned juggle, right?
Right.
If you're not a clown, well, you know what, that could be interpreted in so many ways, right? If you're not trained to juggle, let's put it
that way.
That could have gone left, right? But if you're not trained to juggle, eventually everything is going to fall. And
yes,
two things. I think some people, one, don't realize how much they're juggling until it falls. And they don't realize how much help they've needed and need until all the balls fall.
Right.
You have the people, and I use New Yorkers as an example because, New York is the city that never sleeps. Everybody's go, 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 do. You can barely see to the next block because there's a whole lot of smoke, but you're going to, complete all of these tasks, right? It's not until something happens and we hit a brick wall that we're like, whoa.
Right.
And then we also look back and say, wow, how did I do all of that?
Yes.
Nobody in their right mind would have taken all of that on.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then, Dr. Tate, let me ask you a question then. I love that point. Then why do we take so much on? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I got time. Listen, I can talk to you offline too after the show if we have to.
There are so many reasons.
Right.
I was speaking to a friend of mine. She's actually on now. And I was telling her about how sometimes we desire the heart. Now, who was at Jesus's feet? Mary and Martha, and which one was it? Who was cooking? That was Martha, right?
Martha was the busy one.
Okay.
Mary
so we want the life and heart of Mary, but we maintain a Martha schedule.
Wait. Press it, stop. Wait. Let's just repeat that line one more time. That was good.
So we want the experience of Mary,
Right.
but we maintain the schedule of Martha.
Yes.
But then the question is why?
Right. Why?
First we have to realize that the experience that we want is counter to what we're doing in order to get that experience.
Okay.
And we also have to realize, okay, well, why am I taking all of this on? Yes. Sometimes it's validation.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yes.
Sometimes because we weren't validated in our homes, because we're not validated at our jobs or in ministry. Oops, I'm sorry. We might not be validated in certain areas. Right. And it's affected us so deeply that we consciously or unconsciously look for ways that are things to do that are going to show us, hey, you're capable. Hey, you're worth it. Hey, you're worth all the accolades.
Right.
So sometimes that's why we do things. Yeah. Because we want external things to prove to us that we can do it, that we can handle it.
Yes.
Sometimes it's the result of trauma. There's the concept called mastery, where unconsciously you continue to put yourself in traumatic situations because you're like, okay, well, I'm going to win this time. I'm going to overcome it this time. Yes. So that might be another reason why people take on so much. It could be a learned behavior.
Yeah, that's so.
You saw your mother working 5 jobs and, with 3 nonprofits and 2 businesses and leader here and doing that and Girl Scout leader. And wow. So you learned that what else am I going to do but work and be involved and serve? Because the absence of self-care is also a learned behavior.
Yes. Yeah. And Dr. Tate, even as you're speaking, right, and I know we're referencing Martha for a moment, I'm sitting here thinking about Mary, and that's so good what you said. But yet Mary found one word that came to my mind was peace. All the stuff that you're talking about lacks peace. And as I'm sitting here getting a visual in my mind of Mary, it's like she found, and the Bible says she chose the good part. There's peace there. So
there's peace in being still. Peace.
Okay. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Literally. The good part is filled with so many wonderful things that's so contrary to being busy.
Yep.
And, even as you're talking about acceptance, sometimes why people could be busy, even sometimes it could be self-sabotage. Let me tell you what I'm thinking, because you don't want to face what you have to face. So the moment that you stop being busy, you have to face reality.
You read my mind.
Oh, okay.
Right. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's another reason. We often think about if you've lost a loved one, and this is from personal experience, right? When I lost my grandfather, we got the phone call at 12:51. And that's one thing with trauma, right? You remember like the specific things. 12:51. That was 12:51 a.m. I think my shift at work started at 4 and I was there. I went to work. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stay busy.
Yeah.
I think we were being audited. So we were like cleaning and stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay busy, do this, do that. Literally, I was in the kitchen helping cleaning. I came and sat down in the office And as soon as my body felt that stillness,
Yeah.
floodgates open,
Yeah.
because I was trying to stay busy so I didn't have to face the loss. That's what we tend to do with grief, trauma,
Mm-hmm.
all of that.
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. Listen, to my viewing audience, it's Melanie's Life. Catherine, thank you for joining us. She's so faithful. We're going to take a commercial break, right? But we'll be right back with Dr. Tay, because I think this subject, we may have to do a part 2 too. This is
You
good.
might.
Listen, don't go nowhere. We'll be right back. Well, they're getting ready for the commercial. Dr. Tay, I guess we'll keep going because I don't know. Are they ready for the commercial?
But I rubbed my head, I seen blood. Look, I kept spitting. I spit something out hard. I thought it was my tooth, but come to find out it was a bullet.
20 years ago, 4012 was home to Wen Taylor hoisting a 380
All 7
semi-automatic.
people were just hardworking, regular people.
I was working. I was at Wendy's for almost a year, probably like 10 to 11 months.
Jaquan Johnson was working the grill, just 18 then.
I just turned 18. I was in my prime. I was getting ready to sign up in the Navy. I had a lot of goals and stuff.
I still felt, I know people say, "Oh, that happened 20 years ago," but to me, it sounded like it just felt like it happened yesterday. It just, it's just still there, and I watch it every day. I watch him every day.
They lost their loved ones, but your son lived. You still have your son, so
Right.
but you don't have the same son that you used to have.
No.
Their neurobiology is also going to be off. Trauma can actually affect the way a person's brain functions and how their brain is structured. Person is not going to interact with people the way they normally would after experiencing a traumatic situation. You don't want to call someone who's experienced trauma a victim. You want to call them a survivor.
All I can say to that video was, wow. Let's go ahead and bring Dr. Tay back on. Dr. Tay, welcome back to Real Talk. Wow. Wow. That was a lot. That was a lot to digest. How do we begin to peel that onion back? We're going to figure that out. But what was it like, Dr. Tay? Oh, my goodness. The mom said something that was so paramount. She said, that's not her son from before. Tell us about this whole story. And to my viewing audience, please just pay attention to this. Just kind of share that with us.
So the story, what happened, there were the Wendy's, those who are from Queens and New York City, if you remember the Wendy's massacre, that's what it was dubbed. Someone, I think it was a disgruntled employee, they returned and they shot up the place, I believe. There were, I think, 9 people who were shot. 1 survived. And that's the person you just saw. He was the sole survivor of that tragedy. And, when you, at the beginning of the commercial, he says, he felt something in his mouth. He thought it was a tooth, but it was a bullet. So there are so many, talk about layers, right? He has his personal experience of being shot. He has survivor's guilt, probably. Because he has survivor's guilt because he was the only person who survived. He has the flashbacks and the nightmares, probably because he witnessed other people be murdered. And now you have the aftermath.
Right.
So the intrapersonal experience, what's going on inside of him mentally, physically. Then you have the interpersonal experience.
Yeah.
Between him and his mom and other people people saying, oh, you're different. Well, if you get shot in your head, there's probably going to be changes, and they're not going to be just physical.
Right. Right.
So you have the intrapersonal, the interpersonal, and then you have the institutional. There's another part of the documentary that wasn't shown, but he was denied, I believe he was denied social security benefits, like disability benefits. Yeah. So there's so many layers. If you don't have the right supports,
Right.
if you don't know how to seek the right services or resources, or they're not presented to you,
Right.
that's going to exacerbate what you've already experienced.
Do you know, Dr. Tay, if he's I know that was, I don't know how long that documentary part was, but have you heard any updates, anything?
I haven't heard any updates, and honestly, I've never interacted with the gentleman. I was just part of the documentary because of my experience working with people who have a trauma history. But that was in 2020.
Wow.
So that was 3 years ago. Yeah, right before
Pandemic.
everything shut down. Yep.
What was it like talking to the mom? Because to be a mom, I know how I feel about my girls, and to see your child try to survive, like you said, we don't say victims, we say survivors. He has survived. How, as a mom, like, what was it like? Because that's hard. You know?
She's a survivor as well.
Okay.
Even though she didn't go through it, she's connected to someone
Sure.
who did.
Yeah.
And I mentioned compassion fatigue. That's something that mental health providers often experience, but you also have vicarious trauma.
Okay.
You didn't have to go through it, but someone told you about it or you witnessed it. So kudos to her, because she's surviving the experience of mothering a child. At the time, I think he was still a child, technically. And possibly, still having to, even though he's an adult, still having to function in this parentified role, because there might be delays or there might be needs, physical ailments that he's experienced.
Yeah. My mind goes to Dr. Tay, my own trauma. And just because you mentioned so many different ways, I often wondered I feel like my trauma, to your point, had layers. There was so many layers to the trauma that I experienced that, I'm shaking my head, because you know what? I am a walking miracle, and it's a wonder that because I'm learning so much from the things you're saying, and just thinking about my own life. I am a walking miracle. Because when you think about, like I said, those layers and those levels of just knocking them down, it really takes, at least I speak for myself personally, it took the power of God to help me to get through that kind of trauma. It really did. And I know in your profession, you can't always bring up the spiritual side. I know it's, because whatever. But in your profession, for those that are Christians, for those that have like faith, are they able to navigate, because they still have that kind of weight on them? I know we have God. In other words, are they applying that spiritual side of it?
It depends on the therapist. It depends on the provider.
Okay.
Like, some providers won't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Sure. Yeah.
But there are other providers who are, they utilize spiritually integrated psychotherapy, which means we're going to talk about the mental health aspects and your emotional health and all of that. But if you want to invite the spirituality in, if that's part of you, then let's do it. And then you have, Christian counselors who will counsel based on the Bible. There are different ways to approach it. But I would say, if someone is looking for a provider to treat them holistically in that sense, so not just their mental health, but also their spiritual health, look for them. They're they might not be out there in the open and easy to be found, but ask questions. Like, I think there are certain societies, like for Christian counselors and things of that nature, and they have directories on their website.
Okay.
So definitely find someone who's willing to treat you holistically.
Right.
and also be open yourself
Mhm.
as a believer.
Absolutely.
I think I mentioned to you the last time we spoke that I created a t-shirt that says, I love Jesus and my therapist.
Yes. Mhm.
That's my reality. That's my reality. And it
Yeah.
speaks to the duality
I love that word. Yes.
because we have an emotion, we're humans, we have an emotional human experience. We also have the spirituality.
We
And
do.
those two things can coexist. I've had people say, I don't even know if I should be here because, I'm a believer. I should be praying.
Right.
Absolutely, you should be praying. But
Right.
after you pray and snot and cry,
Get some
you're
help.
going to get up
Mhm. Mhm.
and you're going to get strategy. And sometimes strategy is going to be go to therapy,
Yeah.
speak to someone,
Mhm.
because the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the earth and they that dwell therein. I'm a
Right.
mental health provider and I'm part of the they.
Right. That's
And
right.
I
Right.
know that God didn't equip me with these skills and these experiences and this training just to hide it under a bushel.
I agree.
Use me. I'm available. So that tells me that as a believer, you can still go to therapy.
Yes. Dr. Tay, let's talk a few minutes about triggers
Hmm.
and how traumatic triggers can be as well.
I think it's worse when you haven't first identified what your trigger is.
Mm,
Because there are people who are being triggered left and right and don't know why. They don't know what's going on. Why am I having this reaction? Why am I responding to this person in
yes.
this way?
Mhm.
So they don't realize what the trigger is.
Got it.
I think that's probably when it's the most difficult,
Yes.
when you don't know that you're being triggered. But once you've identified your triggers,
Mhm.
you're better equipped to manage your exposure to them. Sometimes we can't avoid them,
Right.
but
Right.
other times we can. People, places, and things. Anyone who's
Yeah.
familiar with the 12-step program,
Mhm.
sometimes your triggers will be people, places, or
Oh,
things.
right.
Once you've identified it, you know, okay, I'm going to avoid going to that function.
Mhm.
I'm going to, avoid going in that store.
So good. Yeah. Yeah.
But just because you know what your trigger is, that's not the whole process. You have to put in the work of managing them.
To your point, Dr. Tay, I can remember feeling, oh my gosh, you made me think, so frustrated because to your point, I did not acknowledge, accept, and I did recognize, but acknowledge and accept that it was a trigger. So then you feel almost anxious. You feel a little out of control from the perspective of what do you do with the thing that you're feeling? Because it was a trigger.
Right.
And then you don't want to come off like you're crazy, so to speak. But triggers are so real, right? And to your, just talking about it until you come to the realization that triggers exist, it was a game changer for
Yep.
me. I can be transparent and say when I realized that certain things were a trigger, I had to ask the Lord to help me how I process the triggers. So can
That's
we
so
talk
good.
about that? How do you process those triggers? Because you have to find something to do with them.
Right. Yep. Yep. And avoidance isn't enough. Like some people think, well, once I know what my trigger is, I can just avoid it.
Not enough.
Because sometimes you will be faced with your trigger
Yeah.
and unexpected or whatever. Okay, now you're faced with it. What are we doing with it
Yeah.
now? Again, therapy, shameless plug. Therapy can help you identify your triggers. And I think also being self-aware. Like
Mm,
sometimes you have to look at yourself as an experiment. And what's an experiment? You're kind of manipulating variables and seeing the interaction.
yeah.
So kind of take a look back, like, wow, these relationships have ended, or I've had challenges in these particular relationships. Why is that? What happened? What was the antecedent? What caused
What caused
the
it?
reaction?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then what was my response? What was the resulting, emotional state, physical state, whatever. And sometimes you'll be surprised how much data you can get on yourself when you take the time to reflect, and you will get so much insight
Mhm.
about why you do what you do and behave the way you behave.
Right.
Sometimes you need that outside person, but other
Mhm.
times, wow.
Yeah.
A prayer that I pray often is, God, be the mirror in which I see myself.
I love it.
That's a good way to be self-reflective,
Yeah.
reflective.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Dr. Tay, you and I know you know this from your profession. I have the 4 different personalities, right? Sanguine, melancholy, choleric, and phlegmatic. So because I triggers because of trauma, I used to always think I was one type of personality. But I realized as I'm using the word very cautiously, growing, ing, which is a continual process.
Right.
As I'm growing and developing, I'm realizing more and more that my personality came out of my trauma.
So good.
You know what I'm saying? Like being a melancholy. Yes, I'm creative. I understand the good stuff, but the other side of it, it came out of my trauma. So because my identity I could not be identified, so to speak, because of my trauma. And I tell you, I'm enjoying finding out what my personality really is.
Wow.
And I just wanted to mention that because I developed this personality that it was out of my trauma. And maybe I am a phlegmatic, I doubt it, but I'm just saying. I don't think I'm that quiet. Like I don't think that. I mean, I don't think that's my personality, but I do think I'm not. I think I'm giving myself grace. I don't think my personality is as bad as I used to think. I just think it came out of my trauma. So I think I'm just really re-identifying myself. So how do you help people, I guess, learn to really identify who they are? Because we don't really know who we are. I'm speaking as, if I was a client, you don't really know who you are when you're in trauma. It's impossible.
Right. Because you've become the product of your environment and your experiences. And some people, especially those who don't even realize that what they went through was traumatic, they've accepted their day-to-day as normal. So they're like, this is who I am. That's how I am.
Yes. Yes.
This is my norm, because they didn't and why wouldn't it be normal? Because what they went through, it's not processing for them that, hey, this was traumatic for me. So it's just like, oh, I'm just always anxious.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, I just don't get along with women, let's say. Like some of the things that we'll say that we've accepted as, just part of our personality.
Yeah.
It could be the result of a trauma. Well, yeah, if your teenage years were like the movie Mean Girls, then yeah, maybe that's why.
It's true. And
Right.
one of our guests chimed in, Dr. Tan, said, how many of us have developed our personality based on trauma? And then she said, that's life-changing awareness.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that, because this whole conversation with that's a game changer. Because to your point, I remember just like, and I'll say this, when I was in high school, Dr. Tay, they used to call me Baby Bird Brain. And I'm not ashamed now because, of course, I'm 57. And it was because in high school, I never spoke up for myself. I never felt that I was able to speak up for myself. But I think there was a part of me that had people thinking that it was something weird about me. But nobody knew that behind that was a girl that would go home every day and was being molested. You know what I'm saying? So to your point and to our guest tonight, your personality and everything sometimes is just built around that trauma. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you realize it,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you have the power.
Mm.
Not when everything gets better, but once you realize that you've experienced the trauma and realize that you're having this particular reaction, you have the power, because now the ball is in your court, and now you can start the process of healing by way of addressing it.
Yes, so true. Our guest chimed in again, Dr. Tay, and she said, you can't just take yourself out of the environment. You have to take the environment out of you. New revelation.
Well, we could shout on that.
Listen to the guests. Dr. Tay and I both just took a pause. We just took a pause. That was like our praise break right there. And we calling it a pause. Like, see, we just really.
So let's break that down. Let's break that down.
Come on.
Because
break it down, Dr. Tay.
You can take yourself out of the environment, but what are you taking out of you? You're taking how it affected you. And some of that, taking the environment out of you or taking the effect out of you, some of that is not going to be, you won't be able to do it by yourself. Some of that is supernatural. Because some of the memories the words that were spoken, the smells.
Oh,
There are smells
mhm,
that might trigger a memory of a trauma.
mhm, mhm.
Some of that, it's brain wiring. Some of it is neurotransmitters and how. And
That's so good. That's
so we need God to to take it out of us,
mm,
because I don't know anyone who would do surgery on themselves.
mm-mm. And do it right.
Right, yeah,
Right.
that's the part, right?
I
And do
mean,
it right so that you can heal fully and wholly.
come on. That's so good. Dr.
That was
Taylor.
good. Thank you, Melanie. That was
Oh, that's Melanie. Okay, so it's Melanie's like Melanie. Thank you for that. I have to agree.
that was real good.
That was real good. That, yeah, Dr. Taylor, use that with Melanie's permission. Use that when you go do what you do, because that was very powerful. That was very
Absolutely.
powerful. For the last few minutes, Dr. Tay, this has been so good. Oh my goodness. What do you want to say to our viewing audience, for those that are going to watch it on the playback, for those that are looking for a word? When I say a word, looking for somebody to speak life into them. The Bible says that the children of Israel, right? You know the story. Their taskmasters, it was hard. So some people that are dealing with trauma, it's been hard. But then the Bible says that the Lord sent a deliverer. The Lord
Mhm.
sent somebody with a voice to help his people. What do you have to say, Dr. Tay?
It was the point for me, guys. It was the point with both fingers. Um, I would say don't be afraid. The trauma was scary, but don't be afraid to process it.
Mm, yeah,
It's not going to be easy,
right,
but
right.
what healing process is.
So true.
When you go through surgery, I had surgery in November. I had my tonsils removed.
Wow.
I couldn't speak. I tried. I tried to fuss at the kids. It didn't go well. It was tough. And then it got to the point where it wasn't progressing like the doctors thought it should. And then it got to the point where the incision popped and I started bleed. The healing process was challenging for someone who talks for a living. Hello,
Yes.
but I'm here. I share that to say that the healing process is going to come with its challenges, but don't be afraid of the process,
Mm,
because that fear is going to block your healing.
wow. Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid, but go into it knowing that it's going to present its challenges.
Right. Right.
But it's pressure that helps you develop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is it? Diamonds?
I was thinking that diamonds in the rough. That's what happens.
Diamonds. I don't think it's pressure with pearls, but friction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beautiful things come from difficult processes.
Ooh. Yes.
Your healing will be that beautiful thing. You just have to engage in the process.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Dr. Tay. Beautiful things come from the process. That is so true. And for those that are watching tonight, I mean, we could end on that note, because somebody just needs to know it may be rough now, but beautiful things really do come out of the process. Because here we are.
Right.
We're not saying that we're not always constantly working on something, but everybody is. But we can stand here as a witness that beautiful things come through the process. Dr. Tate, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
As always, thank you for being on Real Talk. And listen, Melanie and Catherine, we want to thank you guys for your support. Listen, have people watch the playback. We want to do this again. And you don't want to miss part 2 to this conversation. Where do we go from here? We'll see you next week. Good night.